Sit down and stop embarrassing me, my husband snapped across the dinner table, his voice sharp enough to cut through the room. I tried to stay calm and whispered, I'm not embarrassing you. I'm telling the truth. His hand suddenly struck my face. The sound echoed against the plates and glasses. I froze. The room went silent for one heavy second. Then someone laughed, a soft, ugly laugh that spread around the table. My cheek burned and my ears rang. I looked around at their smiling faces and realized something in that moment. None of them had any idea who my father really was. My name is Danielle Harper, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a community legal assistant at a small legal aid office downtown. It isn't glamorous work. Most days I spend hours helping people fill out paperwork, guiding them through confusing legal forms, and listening to stories about eviction notices, unpaid wages, and broken contracts. The office always smells faintly like old paper and cheap coffee. Still, I love the work because every small victory means someone's life gets a little easier. I grew up believing family meant loyalty. My mother raised me that way. She used to say, people stand with you when things are hard. That's what family means. For most of my life, I believed that completely. But my husband's family believed in something very different. They cared about status, money, and appearances above everything else. To them, I was the quiet wife who should feel lucky to marry into their world. They talked about investments at dinner like it was normal conversation. They judged people based on what car they drove or what neighborhood they lived in. When they looked at me, they saw someone ordinary, someone without power. I never tried to correct them. I wasn't flashy. I didn't brag about my past or my family. The truth is, I almost never talked about my father. After my parents divorced when I was young, I built my life quietly and independently. I paid my own bills, I worked long hours, I avoided leaning on family influence because I wanted to succeed on my own terms. To my husband's relatives, that independence looked like weakness. They thought I had no connections and no one standing behind me. They assumed I was alone. I wasn't rich or glamorous. But I carried something they never expected, and that secret would change everything they thought they knew about me. If you've ever been judged because people thought you came from nothing, then you probably understand the kind of quiet anger that grows inside you. Sometimes the quietest people hold the biggest surprises. If you've ever been underestimated, subscribe to this channel and share your story in the comments. I read them all. And if you believe in proving people wrong, hit like and click hype. Now, let me tell you what really happened that night. It started with a Sunday dinner at my husband's parents' house. They hosted these dinners every month. The dining room was huge, filled with heavy wooden furniture and a long, polished table. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic filled the air that night, but the warmth of the food didn't match the cold looks being passed around the table. Halfway through the meal, my mother-in-law leaned back in her chair and studied me like she was evaluating something she might return to a store. So, Danielle, she said slowly, when are you going to start contributing more to the family business? I blinked. I already work full-time. My husband sighed loudly beside me. Mom means something meaningful, he said. You don't really understand how successful families operate. I felt my stomach tighten. I help people with legal problems every day. That work matters. His brother laughed. So basically, you fill out paperwork for people who can't afford real lawyers. Several people chuckled. My fingers tightened around my fork. Then my mother-in-law cleared her throat and slid a folder across the table. She said, "We've been discussing something important, a post-nuptial agreement." I stared at the folder. It's just to protect family assets, nothing personal. I shook my head slowly. I won't sign anything without my own attorney reviewing it. The room went quiet. My husband's face turned red. You don't trust my family? I said carefully, it's not about trust. He pushed his chair back so hard it scraped the floor. You're embarrassing me again. I stood up too. I'm asking for basic legal advice. That's normal. Then his hand struck my face. The sound cracked through the room. I staggered slightly and touched my cheek. His sister laughed. Well, that's what happens when someone forgets their place. My husband looked down at me with cold eyes and said, "You should remember who you married into." The next week became worse. My husband kept bringing up the agreement. Every conversation circled back to it. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he told me one evening while scrolling through his phone. "I'm asking for legal review. That's reasonable." "My parents think you're planning something." I laughed bitterly. Planning what? Surviving? At the next family gathering, his sister raised her wine glass and said loudly, "Let's toast Danielle for hitting the jackpot marrying into this family." People laughed again. I tried to keep my voice steady. "That's not funny." She shrugged. "Relax, we know you didn't grow up around money." Things kept escalating. My husband suddenly insisted on managing all our finances. "It's just easier if I handle the big decisions," he said. Soon he started telling people I was emotionally unstable after the dinner incident. At his mother's birthday party, he retold the story of slapping me like it was a joke. "And she just stood there staring," he said while guests laughed. I stood in the corner of the living room, listening to them laugh about the worst moment of my marriage. But something inside me had already shifted. Quietly, I started documenting everything. Every message, every threat, every conversation. The more arrogant they became, the more convinced they were that I had no power to challenge them. What they didn't know was that my father taught me something important when I was young. Never reveal your strongest card too early. I stayed silent about him for years because I wanted my life to belong to me, not to his name. After my parents divorced, he told me something I never forgot. "Your independence matters more than my reputation," he said. So I built my own life without using his influence. But the night my husband slapped me changed something inside me. That night, I made a phone call I hadn't made in years. My father answered on the second ring. When I told him what happened, there was a long silence on the line. Then he spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Danielle, are you ready for this to end?" My husband and his family believed they were dealing with a powerless woman. They had no idea they had just crossed someone far more powerful than they imagined. A few days later, I met an old family lawyer in a quiet office downtown. The room smelled like old books and polished wood. He had known my father for decades. I explained everything: the slap, the pressure, the agreement. He listened carefully. Then he leaned back in his chair and said something surprising. "Your husband's family business has serious legal vulnerabilities." I frowned. "What kind?" "Financial reporting issues," he said calmly. "They've been hiding things." Over the next week, he helped me collect documentation about the pressure they were putting on me. Meanwhile, my husband grew more confident. "She'll give in eventually," he told his relatives. His mother planned another family dinner. "This time we settle the agreement," she said proudly. They believed the humiliation would break me. Instead, that dinner became the night everything collapsed. The entire family gathered in the living room that evening. The agreement sat on the table in a neat folder. My husband pushed it toward me. "Sign it and stop causing drama." I folded my hands calmly. "Before I sign anything," I said, "there's someone I'd like you to meet." The front door opened. My father walked into the room with the lawyer behind him. The room went completely silent. My husband's face drained of color as he recognized him. My father stepped forward slowly. "You slapped my daughter," he said quietly, "and tried to force her into signing a legal document." The lawyer placed papers on the table. These outlined the legal consequences of intimidation and financial coercion. My mother-in-law tried to interrupt. "This is ridiculous. She's twisting things." The lawyer slid another document forward. "These are financial records connected to your company." My father looked directly at my husband. "You believed she needed your family," he said. Then he spoke one final sentence. "You had no idea who you were humiliating." I filed for divorce soon after that night. My husband's family stopped contacting me once the legal pressure started. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to reconnect with my father, not because I needed his power, but because I finally allowed myself to accept his support. The slap that was meant to silence me became the moment everything changed. I rebuilt my life again, quietly, on my own terms, and the people who once laughed at me learned a painful truth. You should never underestimate someone just because they choose not to show their strength. If you've ever been publicly humiliated by someone who thought they had power over you, then you understand how painful that moment can be. But sometimes those moments become the turning point in your life. Share your story in the comments if someone underestimated you. Subscribe so we can support each other here. And click hype to help the story reach others who need it. Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype you give this video helps empower someone else who might be going through something similar. Thank you for being here and for listening.